Penn State falls 27-24 to Notre Dame in the most demoralizing loss of my Penn State lifetime. That was there's no getting around that. That I don't know how you top that one. Won't be over this one for a long time. And I think this will be a game very similar to like 2017 Michigan State. I still remember that game vividly and how crushing that was. I think this is going to be a game for the rest of my life that you think back to and say, damn, we had it and we just totally blew it. This was the perfect opportunity. And by the way, I apologize if the audio isn't that great. I didn't even feel like getting any microphones or anything set up. I'm just ranting at the camera for the next 30 or 40 minutes. I'm going to be miserable. I apologize if it's all over the place, but I need to get a lot of stuff out right now. This was bad. This was really bad, and I'm frustrated and I'm disappointed and I'm heartbroken. I'm upset. I'm everything rolled into one. And it was funny because we were talking on Mostly Sports earlier today. They said, Connor, would you rather have a game where you just don't belong at all and you lose by 50? And it's like, oh, well, whatever. Or would you rather have a game that was really entertaining? It's a good fight, good 4 hours of football, and you lose in a heartbreaker. And I did choose this option. I did. The issue is we lost in a heartbreaker, and it was an amazing game. The casual fan, I'm sure, was having a blast in that second half with all the momentum swings and the big plays and the controversial calls and everything. But again, very similar to our struggles against Boise State, I think a lot of this was self-inflicted. I think we lost this game instead of Notre Dame going out and winning. And granted, Notre Dame in that second half was a great football team. Great football team. But we pretty much had them dead to rights in the first half. That 10-0 lead that we jumped out to, I was with Notre Dame fans. I was watching it in the Barstool Sports Gambling Cave with three of them. They said it felt insurmountable to them because they're not a team that's meant to come from behind and pull off these wins. They're very much, Leonard is more than a game manager, but still that's kind of his role. Don't turn the ball over. Give it to your running backs. You have a great run game. Do these methodical drives down the field, but that's not meant to come back and win if you're down by double digits. It's not an offense that's suited for that. And yet somehow we let them come back from being down double digits. And then we have the interception and bad decision making. And oh man, it was there. Like we had it. And there were so many parts of this game where I'm thinking if this just goes differently or if we don't make this mistake, like we win. But fact of the matter is we made those mistakes. And you wind up with the same questions. The same questions. And that's what really hurts is the fact that we go into another offseason, even though I thought this was a really fun year and I thought we made a lot of strides and I was so proud of this team. You still have to worry about James Franklin as a big game coach. Personally, I don't think this loss was on him at all tonight. I don't think he did anything to lose us this game. But the fact of the matter is, the entire country still thinks that. The entire country still looks at it and says, Penn State can never win a big game. Who coaches Penn State? James Franklin. Okay, well, he's a terrible big game coach. Like that's what the narrative is going to be. There's that stat. I've already seen it thrown out a bunch since the end of the game. I think it's 1 in 15 or 1 in 14 against top five teams. We've been under Franklin. Again, slightly misleading because it wasn't like we were ever expected to win a lot of those games. And some of those games I think came when we were in the sanction years. And it's a misleading stat, but the fact of the matter is it's still a stat. And that's all that people are going to latch on to. James Franklin can never win a big game, never win a big game. We get so close. And this year was probably the closest we've ever been, but we can't get over the hump for whatever reason. And then the other question, the other narrative that people were, spewing out and they were theorizing like, oh, is Drew Allar really the guy? They were doing this last offseason. Probably going to be doing it again this year because of that awful performance, that terrible performance that he had today. By far his worst game of this season. I don't want to say of his entire career, but he was off the entire night and then obviously threw the game away with that last pick, which we'll get to more in a second. I love him. I'm happy to have him as our quarterback. I think he's the most talented quarterback that I've ever seen at Penn State. There are so many flashes of him just being like next level good, where I truly do believe that he could be the number one quarterback in the draft taken next year. I think he could possibly just be the number one overall pick in general next year when he goes into the draft. And there are games this season that he has, I mean, flat out won us. And if we did not have him as our quarterback, we absolutely would have lost. I think back to USC, I think back to Minnesota. Those were losses, but we had an amazing quarterback who was able to reel us back into those games and get those really, really tough wins. And if we don't get those, we're not even in this situation. So I love Drew Allar. I will never, ever, ever regret having him as our quarterback or loathe him as a quarterback. But yeah, this was an awful game for him. Really, just a terrible game. And now, once again, just like last season, because they only see Drew Allar in these big games, and I can't blame them. The big games are where legends are made, and it's where, sometimes people crumble. And so far, these games, people have seen him throw picks. They've seen him be off. They've seen him, overshoot receivers. And if you're going to judge Drew Allar on this game, yeah, he's a terrible quarterback, but he's not. He had a bad game, but unfortunately, the casuals and even some people, in the national media who are legitimate talking heads, I imagine, are going to be criticizing him and questioning whether or not he is capable of taking us to the promised land. That's what sucks. So you have James Franklin not being able to coach in big games, not being able to win big games, and then you have the Drew Allar situation. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you get over it aside from finally winning these close games. We can't do it. These big games on a big stage, and it's also really frustrating because the entire narrative too. Again, I'm all about narratives. I'm all about perception, especially in this era of college football that's so dependent on money and donors and boosters and getting them to buy in, getting transfers to buy in, getting recruits to buy in. Perception is everything. And I said in my you could go back to my preseason preview. I said there are only so many more games, only so many more years where you can continue to lose close. You can't keep selling people on, oh, we're close. Eventually, you got to break through. I think I said that verbatim in my preseason preview. And this was another situation where you had a chance to break through and you didn't. And the problem is, it was the first real test, and the narrative was, oh, well, Penn State, they haven't played anybody to get here. They don't deserve to be here. They had the easiest path out of anybody. SMU and Boise State, those aren't big games. Anybody could have beat those teams. And I've been saying the entire run, like, yes, we are way better than them, but once we get to a Notre Dame or a Georgia in the semifinal, like, you'll see what Penn State's all about. Because even though I have a lot of questions about this team, I have all year, I've had worries. I think there are definitive holes and weaknesses. Still, this team fights, and I would not be able to count them out in any game. And to their credit, tonight, they fought hard. That was a heavyweight bout tonight. Back and forth, momentum swing after momentum swing. But you needed to win this game to shut the naysayers up. Because now, again, going back to narratives, James Franklin can't win a big game. Drew Allar, still not the guy. Penn State, even though I think they were a really good team this year, and you can make the argument that they were a top four, top five team in the country this year. Going to be a lot of people who say, yeah, they had a Mickey Mouse path to the semifinal, and then once they finally played a real team, they lost. Frauds. I don't think we're frauds, but how are you supposed to convince people otherwise? Just like, how do you convince people that James Franklin isn't a big game coach? The stats say he's not a big game coach. How can you convince people that Drew Allar, is really the guy? Because in these big games, his stats aren't that great. He's throwing picks. And then how can you get, like, you're in an impossible situation as a Penn State fan. Because again, this team was great. But I guarantee you people will still say, well, why are they so great? They never even beat one single quality opponent. Yeah, they lost close, but they still lost. Like, that's the frustrating part about this year. I had so much fun, so many great games that I'll watch forever. I'll go back to my parents' house, queue up the DVR, and I'll watch Penn State USC, and I'll watch Penn State Minnesota. I even enjoyed watching the Oregon game, even though it was a loss. Um, but at the end of the day, there's been nothing that's changed about the perception of this program, and I'd like to think it's getting better. Pat Kraft, Neely Bendapudi, they've been great. They've been improving stuff. They've been greenlighting stuff. They've been pouring more money into football and athletics as a whole. Beaver Stadium, $700 million renovation. We're getting an uptick in NIL, and you have all these players coming back. Drew coming back is great. I mean, really needs to come back after this game. There were all those questions and headlines like, oh, if Drew Aller dominates and wins a national championship, does he just go to the NFL, even though he already said he's coming back? No, there's no shot of that happening right now. But still, great quarterback. And he'll work some stuff out. He'll get another year in Nicky's system. We'll get more receivers for him. That like there's a lot of good, so much good going on in the program right now that is very exciting for the future. But we still have the same perception as a program, and that's what sucks. So that's my long rant. It was probably all over the place. I was probably very repetitive too. We'll get into the actual game now. I thought I thought the first half was amazing. I was almost too confident to the point where I was scared, and maybe I had a right to be. We were dominating them at the line of scrimmage. The war in the trenches on both sides of the football completely went in our favor. And I thought they looked scattered offensively. I thought our defensive line was getting after them, and we were constantly in the backfield. They only had 16 rushing yards at the half. We shut them down for the most part. That last drive where they were able to get a field goal, like still, I thought they looked all out of sorts, but they did get down the field on us a little bit. But still, aside from that, I thought it was a lights out performance defensively in the first half, and then offensively, he had that 15 play, 90-yard drive where 13 of the 15 plays are runs. And we just went straight down their throat, punch it into the end zone. And that was a real FU bully drive that I was not expecting to see. Was not expecting to see because the whole narrative, again, going back to narratives and perceptions about teams and everything like that, was that Notre Dame, this big physical defense. Penn State's really going to have a hard time running on them. Didn't have a hard time running on them at all that drive. There was also that play on that drive where Tyler Warren should have been tackled for like an 8-yard loss and wound up getting 9 by just stiff arming a dude to oblivion. And it was awesome. I was like, oh my God, we are taking it to him. And we go up 10-0. And the whole point coming into the game was, oh, if Penn State gets up on them early, they're going to coast. I believed it too. I believed that we'd be able to coast after going up 10-0. I was like, Notre Dame isn't built to come back from behind. And you see how much they're struggling in this game to move the football. And at that point, Riley Leonard had already thrown a pick to Zachy Wheatley. I was like, we got this in the bag because they're not built to come from behind. We were doing to them what was expected, what a lot of people expected Notre Dame to do to us, being tough in the trenches and running the football and moving down the field and not turning the ball. Like, that's what we were doing. We were giving them a taste of their own medicine, and it was awesome. And I thought there was zero chance that they were going to be able to come back because of what everybody was saying and what we've seen on tape. Like, this Notre Dame team, not meant to come from behind. And yet they they get a field goal, 3 points to end the first half. And that was all they needed to catapult them because then they get the ball to start the second. They, I mean, just moved down the field so easily on us. It was a totally different team that came out at halftime, and they tied the game up 10-10, all the momentum on their side. Even though I was watching the game with Notre Dame fans, and apologies if I said this already. I don't even know what I'm saying or if I'm ranting or if I'm repeating stuff, but they thought that was an insurmountable lead, that 10-0 lead. They were shitting their pants because they had no idea. They weren't expecting it. And they had no idea how they were going to get back into the game, and we let them get back into the game. And the main thing is there were 2 plays in my eyes in that first half that were alarming and I thought could possibly come back to bite us. Sure enough, they both did. Drew Allar underthrew Nick Singleton on, I mean, a gimme touchdown, a walk-in touchdown, 3rd down, right on the goal line. And we run, I mean, people have pointed it out, and it kills me, but it was the same play, essentially, that the Eagles ran to Saquon Barkley back in the Falcons game. I think it was week 2 of the Eagles season where Saquon dropped it, but it was right there. This one wasn't Nick's fault. It wasn't the running back's fault for dropping it, I don't think. I think it was a really bad pass by Drew. It could have been on the numbers, and I think if it is on the numbers, Nick Singleton easily just essentially walks into the end zone. It was so wide open. Drops it. We have to settle for a field goal. That's 4 points off the board. Then Notre Dame gets the ball. It was that drive where Riley Leonard gets hurt, and it's their backup who's in the game. I actually thought their backup did a pretty solid job, and he was moving the ball through the air. I was stunned. I was like, why aren't they running the football? They got their backup quarterback in there. And Riley Leonard had already thrown a pick against this defense. Why are they trusting this guy? It was their backup to be throwing it. But I think he went like 5 of 6 or 6 of 7 at first or something like that. It was crazy. But he did have a play where we stripped it, we got to him, and it fell right. The ball fell right at Abdul Carter's feet. And I don't know if he just caught it late and didn't see it right away, or if it was his shoulder that was still bugging him and he didn't want to dive on the ball and he was like hesitant to do. I don't know. I don't know how he didn't come up with the football. It was right there. It was right there for the taking. And if you pick that up, that was right before the half. You stop Notre Dame from getting three. Maybe you try and go and score a little bit more. Regardless, if Nick Singleton catches that ball and it's a better throw, and if you prevent Notre Dame on that last drive from getting a field goal because you got the strip sack and you recovered it, that's a 14 to nothing lead at halftime. And it's a totally different ball game. But instead, it's 10-3, one possession game, and Notre Dame gets that possession to start the second half, and they took full advantage of it. You got to give credit to Notre Dame. I thought they were dead in the water, dead in the water. And that's what's so devastating about this loss is that you had them. You had them. Regardless, we go through the second half. Um, some really big time plays, some really controversial calls. Notre Dame, I mean, once again, we have another blown coverage that allows Notre Dame to tie the game up at 24. But of course, we only had 24 points because we had a very, very lucky pass interference call go in our favor. I did not think it was pass interference to Tyler Warren in the back of the end zone. Drew Allar's throwing it into triple coverage. There was a fourth guy coming to Tyler Warren, and it was a bad throw. He underthrew it, gets picked off by Notre Dame. It gets wiped away, though, because of the pass interference, and we're able to punch it in with Nick Singleton a couple plays after that because we were moved, 15 yards down the field or whatever it was, half the distance to the goal line. But that was one of two picks that Drew Allar threw that were taken off the board because of penalties from Notre Dame. Both of them terrible throws, and yeah, he was just off the entire night. But regardless, after Notre Dame takes all the momentum back, we get it back with that touchdown by Nick. Uh, well, I say that touchdown by Nick. He had 3 touchdowns in the game today. He was awesome. But we wind up going 24-17. We're up, let up that brutal touchdown on another blown coverage, just like we had last game against Boise State. This one was just because Cam Miller fell down. It wasn't like it was a missed assignment or anything like that. But 24-24, all you had to do was just not go three and out. I mean, honestly, it was a brutal, brutal timing of that touchdown because it left just enough time where Penn State, they could theoretically run the clock out, but there's a good chance Notre Dame's going to get the ball back if we don't, go down and score. So the worst thing you could have done was go three and out, and we did. And that sucked. Notre Dame gets the ball back, and I'm thinking, okay, we're done. This is over. Uh, then, of course, we stop them, and we get the ball back. And at this point, I'm like, great. We stopped them going to overtime. But then we have a nice run by Singleton, and I'm thinking, oh, we might be able to score here. And then Drew Allar throws, yeah, the worst pick ever. And he said on the post game that he was trying to throw it just into the ground, trying to throw it at Amari's feet. Clearly didn't go to his feet, went straight to the defender. And Notre Dame somehow gets the ball back in prime position to, get some more yards and kick a last minute field goal. And they did that. Yeah, just brutal. Drew Allar, his worst game of the year. Not even close. And he did not show up tonight. Started to gain his footing a little bit in late third or early fourth quarter. But as I said, when we need him to just sustain a drive. Don't even necessarily need him to get points. Just run the clock out. He goes three and out. Then when we have 40 seconds left in regulation, when we could have just said, "Hey, we're going to overtime," great. He throws a pick and puts Notre Dame in perfect position to win the game. It was horrendous. It was really bad. And then the other two picks that I mentioned that were taken off the board already because they were penalties, both of them terrible throws. But it doesn't help that the receivers are so piss poor. They finished this game with zero receptions. There was not a single wide receiver who caught a pass today from Penn State. It was all tight ends and it was all running backs. And that has been the problem for the past 2 years. These receivers are just not it. Trey Wallace, they say he's made strides. Okay. In our biggest games, he really has not been a reliable option at all. And I really thought after West Virginia week one, I thought we had a true wide receiver one. Maybe not, as good as we've had in the past, like a Jahan Dotson or a KJ Hamler or Chris Godwin or whoever. But I thought it would be somebody who was reliable, and he has not been reliable at all. Didn't show up today. And there were so many times he just wasn't open. Amari Evans was a quarterback in high school. We converted to a wide receiver, pardon me. Not dependable. Liam Clifford, not dependable. Julian Fleming, great blocker. Can't get open. Like, these receivers are bad. And thank goodness we have Kyron Hudson coming in. And then I'm blanking on the guy from Troy, Devontae Ross, because we need him. We need some help. And who knows if I mean, Julian Fleming, I thought was going to be a real game changer. And technically, he was a game changer in the USC game. And we're not here without the USC game. But I expected much more from him. I expected much more from Dante Cephas and Malik McClain last year. Didn't pan out. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know why we just can't get good receivers and why we can't develop receivers. And Franklin will say, "Oh, these guys developed a whole lot this year." No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Terrible at receiver, and that was a big problem tonight. The run game was fine, and Tyler Warren had a great game, and Khalil Dinkins got in the mix a little bit. Luke Reynolds had a completion, I think. Um, but the receivers just you can't. I mean, there was zero chance after watching this game, even if we had won this game, there was zero chance that I think we would have beaten Texas or Ohio State if these receivers were going to have the same type of performance that they did tonight. Just can't have it. And then defensively, I've said it all year. The linebackers are a problem, and they were getting targeted to no end today in that passing attack in the second half from Riley Leonard. They loved that matchup. And I don't know if the problem was that we weren't getting home quick enough and the Notre Dame offensive line was holding up and was doing a really good job of handling the blitz. And then the only people left in the secondary were these linebackers who had to drop back in coverage. I don't know. But they were getting toasted, Kobe King in particular. And I have never trusted these linebackers at all. And they're the backbone of the defense. And for a school that used to be linebacker I don't think we're anywhere near the quality that we need to have at linebacker. When it comes to the defensive line, thought they played a great game. And Abdul Carter, got to give him credit. He toughed it out. I didn't like all the talk coming into the game, even though he was doing Darth Vader stuff. And I love Darth Vader and I love Star Wars. And I should have been nerding out over this. Like, oh my God, my two favorite things in the world, Penn State football and Star Wars coming together. And Abdul Carter's going to go off tonight. I didn't like the talk because you needed to back it up. And I think he did back it up tonight. He's getting held on every single play. But at the end of the day, we still lost the game. And he was talking all that talk, and I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like that. You needed to come out and win today, and you needed to be dominant defensively. And as a whole, I do not think we were dominant defensively at all. Again, the fact that Notre Dame even came back in this game in the first place was shocking. They scored 17 points straight. And then there were some plays down the line that were critical. Also, the Zane Durant hands to the face. Zane Durant has been so good this entire year, and that was a pivotal play that gifted Notre Dame some extra yardage in a situation where they needed to get in field goal range, and that's when I knew it was over. As soon as that hands to the face penalty occurred, I was like, this game's over. I don't really know what else there is to say aside from this was a great performance in the first half. Penn State looked like a national championship level team, and then it all just went down the drain in the second half. That third quarter was abysmal. But kudos to the team for once again fighting back. They fought back all year. They never quit, and they took the punches straight to the chin, and then they delivered some punches of their own, and it just didn't work out in the end because we kind of threw the game away. Literally, we threw the game away, and it's so tough to swallow. It's going to be very hard to recover from it. But again, very fun year. We got 16 games of Penn State football. Don't take it for granted. I enjoyed so much of it, but the three biggest games this year, Ohio State lost tight. Oregon lost tight. Notre Dame lost tight. And when a path to the national championship was gifted to you on a silver platter, may never get easier than this, we botch it. And that really stings. So I still love this team. I still, love Franklin. I thought it was a great year for him. I love Kotelnicki. It was a great hire bringing him in. I love Drew. I love all these guys, but this one, yeah, they blew it, and it's going to take some time for me to get over it. So I guess that's all I got. I'll look over the notes and see if there's anything that I left out. Deni Dennis Sutton had a great pick. I forgot to mention that. That was an insane play on the football. But yeah, yeah, that's it. I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna go home. I'm tired. I'm miserable. So without further ado, I'm gonna end the video. This is McConnell Griffin signing off. An amazing Penn State football season. So much fun. So many memories. But this one's gonna hurt for a while. I'll catch you.